Hey, welcome to the Growth Whisperers podcast, where everything we talk about is related to helping leaders and their teams build enduring great businesses. I'm Kevin Lawrence, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Brad Giles. Brad, how you doing today?
I am doing pretty good today, I tell you. Very good indeed. Very good indeed.
Awesome. I am good. I've had a bit of a break last week. I'm feeling fresh and quite recharged. I could still use a little more charge. Speaking of charges, what are we talking about today on the show, Brad?
Oh, that is the perfect segue. So what do we got on today? Well, first of all, we're talking about this upstart called Tesla becoming more valuable than the industry giant Toyota. That's number one. And then we're talking about where did all the profit go? So for entrepreneurs, sometimes they ask themselves the question, where did all the profit go? What we've made an accounting profit, but I don't seem to realize it. So yeah, we're going to dig deep into that question today. But first of all, let's rewind a little bit. It was announced this week that Tesla had become the most valuable car maker. So Toyota shares are currently trading at 10 times their 2022 estimated earnings, and Tesla shares are trading at 69 times their 2022 estimated earnings, right?
Wow.
Toyota sold 30 times more cars than Tesla last year, and its revenues were 10 times higher. And only last quarter, or this quarter, did Tesla actually make its first profit. So how it kind of defies logic a little bit. How is it possible that we can have Tesla, this electric car maker who's struggled, and then we've got this giant global organization? I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's being valued more like a tech company than a manufacturing organization to start with. And, as always, values are about people's confidence in the future. And people have a lot of confidence in Tesla. I mean, first of all, what Elon Musk has done with that company and his other companies, he says it, and although it might seem a little bit far-fetched, and then he does it. And he executes, or his team executes quite well. But I think I've been talking about Tesla for years with my clients. I've worked a number of times with in the auto business with large retail groups that have 20, 30, 40 stores, and we've talked about Tesla as the one to watch. And many times initially they think I was crazy, but I said, you got to realize though, Tesla, it's not about the car. The car is great. And as a person, we can maybe chat about it later, but as a real car guy, as you are, I enjoy the passion for driving. And Tesla is more about convenience for driving versus the passion that I experience in cars I like to drive. Although I think they're great cars. But the main thing is that Tesla is competing based on solving unmet customer needs. In some cases, needs customers didn't even know they have, because the traditional auto business has a lot of pain and friction points. Like there's the sales process that is still a la 1960s and 70s, generally in many of them. And I work with some auto groups where their people are awesome and they do, but the model and the way the model is engineered. And then there's this thing called maintenance, which Teslas don't really need, and a number of other things where, they're coming at it more like an app on the App Store and iTunes than they are a company that's in the manufacturing business. So the friction is removed out of the system. So when we've talked about Tesla before, it's, I've used the metaphor, and you and I were chatting about it, is it's like all the automakers are kind of out on the battlefield having a fight with knives in their hands. Tesla's coming along with missiles.
Yeah.
And airplanes and dropping bombs on people. Like that. It's not even a fair fight. It's not even the same type of fight, because they're coming from
have
a dramatically.
Have they just built a better mousetrap? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not that. Again, it's if you look at the mousetrap as the whole experience, yes, it's not that it's a better car. Yeah. There's lots of benefits to the car, but it's the buying experience of Tesla is beautiful, right? It's not the typical salesperson experience and negotiation. You can just order it online off your phone.
Yeah.
So it's a frictionless experience. They're solving a whole bunch of things that the auto business isn't even thinking about. They don't have big expensive showrooms. They have some nice showrooms, but not the large scale. They don't have big expensive service operations. They have mobile service. There's a number of things. And then, as you know, you get into the value prop of saving fuel, feeling cool because you're helping out the environment. Whether you're really helping the environment or not, I actually don't know. All these battery powered things, I don't know the net benefit. But the savings of fossil fuels are good, but there might be second round things that maybe aren't as good.
Well, you have to replace the battery. That's one thing. Like the battery, I'm guessing it's got a 5 to 9 year life cycle. That's a pretty expensive cost. But yeah, they're definitely very popular. That's for sure.
They are. I would have one. People have asked me. I mean, I love the company and what it has done. But where I go, we go a lot up to, interestingly, the racetrack, which is about a 4-ish hour drive where I go, and where we often vacation. It's about a 4-ish hour drive. And I came back on the weekend, and I went by one of those Tesla superchargers that's on the way. And I think there was 6 charging stations, and there's 8 Teslas. So the people that are charging are sitting there on the grass, taking their time, and then the other people are waiting. Like I would probably sell my car on the spot if I had to sit and wait like that. I am not patient by any means. So I love the idea of a car that's easier to drive, and many of my friends have them, easy to drive, and all that stuff is great. But I don't want to have to stop. And if I am driving back from when we go, on my SUV, I don't have to stop if I don't want to.
Yeah.
And to me, that means a lot, saving time. But if I was driving around the city, like I think there's lots of great things, but the question is that why is their value so high? Because no different, I think, than you would look at Uber to taxis. People didn't think of the auto business being like taxi, but really the whole ecosystem around the auto business, it's got a lot of friction and cost in it, and Tesla's removing a lot of it.
I think that they're just playing a different game. So there's an article that we use called, it's a HBR article, What is Strategy? And in that they compare IKEA to the traditional furniture retailer. And what's happening there is the traditional furniture retailer is playing a completely different game. They're all about the furniture is there, it's ready to buy, it's assembled. We'll give you the sales help that you want.
We'll deliver it and set it up, and we'll take away your old stuff or whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
And they're the attributes of that furniture market. When you look at IKEA, they're playing a different game. They're playing a game whereby it's you assemble it yourself. Obviously, you need to take it home yourself. They've got a very specific layout. It's called the snake in retail. This is like the super giant snake, where you walk all around and you see every single thing to finally get to the warehouse, to finally pick up what you've ordered or what you want, and then to go and pay for it and pick up some meatballs on the way out. And then finally, it's a fun project. Now, I would definitely debate whether or not it's a fun project, assembling IKEA furniture, but for some people it is. It's a kind of, it drives
people than you would think. More people than you would think it's fun, because there's people like to have their hands on things. They like to have a role in it, and they save, or they believe they've saved money too. But it's an adventure going to IKEA. My kids would love going to IKEA.
Yeah.
Right. It was an experience. It was almost like an outing and an adventure more than just going to the furniture store.
So if we play that back, we think about that like Tesla, all of the traditional car manufacturers, within reason, they're playing by a certain set of rules that carry a huge legacy. And think about the cost of legacy when we think about Kodak, for example, or when we think about, cable TV compared to Netflix. And then you think about, now Tesla are playing a different game. They're servicing a completely different set of attributes. And I think that's really important. But the other thing that I think is driving that, again, 10 times earnings versus 69 times earnings they're trading at for Tesla, I think is It's this the software they've got that runs the car, the autonomous vehicle software.
Yeah, it's exceptional.
Yeah, so they've logged 2 billion miles. They did 1 billion miles last year because every single Tesla, every single mile, it's recording every single thing that happens, and it's aggregating all of that data up. The closest that I could find was a company called Waymo in San Francisco had done about 1 million miles last year. But as you know, 1 million is completely different to 1 billion. And so, yeah, it would, I can't remember what that was, but it would take, if you were walking 1 million miles compared to 1 billion miles, yeah, it would take thousands of years to get there. The point is, they're going to, in the same way that Apple disrupted the music industry, I'm wondering if what's going to happen here is Tesla, with that software that no one can catch up on, are going to disrupt the industry for car manufacturing. And they're going to force all of the other manufacturers to use the autonomous vehicle software because it's the only one that can be trusted. And then they kind of surrender their R&D efforts.
It could be, and it's interesting, Brad, as you're saying that, because I remember talking to people about cars, and they're saying, well, the other car companies will come out with excellent electric cars. I'm sure they will, and they are. Like the new Porsche Taycan is outstanding. Like it is probably, from a passionate driver's perspective, 2, 3, 4x probably what the Tesla is. From what I haven't driven, I don't want to drive it because I'll probably buy it. I love Porsche brand, and I know it will have that visceral feeling that a Porsche gives you. It'll be outstanding, and they've got some better technology than Tesla on the battery side and the power delivery and stuff. But what they don't have is these overall strategic things, i.e. the platform potentially, and even the supercharging network itself is. And we were talking earlier about now Tesla getting into insurance and doing insurance. They have it in Canada, it's 20% cheaper, and because they have the data, they can better figure out who to insure and who not to insure, as you and I were chatting a little earlier. So there's a lot there that makes it, but the root of it, like I say, I called it the missiles to a knife fight. They are playing a different game, but unfortunately, some people don't realize it, and some of their competitors think Tesla's playing the same game. It's the let's have a better car game, but it's these other levers that work their way into how people live their lives that become really powerful, like you said, with the iTunes or Uber to taxis, whatever it happens to be. So what's interesting, and how do we flip this around to the businesses that we work with, right? Like, how is it you can take Tesla's innovative, disruptive thinking, and by the way, their advantage is they weren't a car company, so they weren't encumbered, as you use the word legacy, they weren't encumbered by traditional thinking or systems or whatever it happens to be. But how can you bring this to your own company and think like Tesla and think about what really could be, and not be stuck in the traditional thinking of the industry? That's that is the strategic question in all of this.
Well, how are you going to be different? I mean, everyone has their own definition of strategy, and I find it fascinating. My definition, which is, might not be yours or it might not be someone else's, is that you have a unique and valuable position in the market that is different from competitors. So you want to
that the customer actually gives a crap about.
Oh, 100%.
You can have all your walls can be pink and purple and with green stripes. That's different.
Yeah.
But does the customer care enough to want to transact? Right? Is it meaningful to them? Yeah, that's all it is. Is solving their problem in a different way that they appreciate.
The customer will want you into bankruptcy, but if you service their needs better than anyone else, I mean, that's the raw kind of definition of where the dollars will flow. Beyond that, if you can continue to become more different, and we go back to IKEA versus the furniture retailer, if you can continue to carve out and own that different niche that meets the customer's needs better than anyone else, and is you're competing to be different, I think that's that's where it's at, and
It
our
is.
customers can think, how can we be different?
And the other thing that I've seen over the years, Brad, is people start out different, but then they pay too much attention to the damn competition.
Yeah.
So they start out with a missile at a knife fight, but then they gradually get into the knife fight. It's like, stay in the damn airplane and drop the missiles. Don't reduce yourself to their level. And I see it all the time because, well, you start listening to the customer feedback. Well, I wish you did this and I wish you did that. Well,
And
what
we
is the
could grow our
customer feedback?
revenues by doing that.
Exactly. But what is the customer feedback based on? Their experience with your customers or competitors, sorry.
Yeah.
So if you don't stay strategic, and stay different and value your meaningful part of your difference, if you listen to too much employee and customer feedback without your strategic filter, you will gradually commoditize yourself and go from your missile fight down to a knife fight again, and be doing the same. And before you know it, and a lot of businesses, people start out, I'm going to do it better and I'm sick of the company I'm at, or I've got a better idea, and they are different. But then they lose it over time. And I often will watch the gross margin, and you watch that percentage and you watch it over time, and often it drops.
Yeah.
Because they stop doing the different stuff and they start chasing the easy revenues. And again, they go from the dropping missiles to knife fight, and they wonder why their profits fade, and it gets more competitive. It's because they started thinking like everybody else. And it's almost like you got to be proud to stand there and being different and own it and not dilute it. And that's not easy. So sometimes you have to create that difference. But often it's to protect yourself from commoditizing yourself and giving up your difference because you pay too much attention to others.
I agree with all that. One other little thing is, there's a venture capital firm called Andreessen Horowitz, I think it's called.
Yep,
they wrote an article about 10 years ago, software is eating the world. If you come back from that, the other thing that you could do or consider to be more like Tesla in this context is, what if you had better and more data than your competitors? What if you focused on getting better data? How would that help?
If it creates value? And some companies have boatloads of it. And we got to get the data. We got to own the data. Okay, now what? Well, then they have a bunch of data, but there's no way to create more value with it. So data alone can be dangerous or a distraction, and it can be a powerhouse, like in the case of Tesla, if the data helps you to better insure people or keep people safe to start with or prevent maintenance or who knows what. So it can be, but I've also seen it where it's a waste of bloody time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Question would be, how can you get better data that will meet the customer's need?
Yes. Or meet the customer's needs they don't even know that they have yet, but in the future. Yeah. And I think that's great. And you're right, because there is, I was talking with a few very successful retail organizations, and even talking, for example, about how during this COVID thing, their digital sales have exploded, and obviously the stores in many cases were shut, but they're even looking forward going, how's this store thing going to work? But because the digitization of their business, the digital piece has skyrocketed. So that gets into both strategically as being connected to the trends and where the market's going. Yeah. Right. And right now, one of the trends we're running is a lot of software and digitization of no matter what you do, no matter how different it is. If there's not some digital component to your strategy in a lot of cases, or if you're not staying connected to what could happen, even the most old school manufacturing companies, digitization is important at some point, and even we're seeing it in restaurants and all kinds of industries, where it starts to become a factor, and you got to be paying attention.
And that's like we were 100 years ago, and we're saying, look, it's two guys who are sitting around, and they say, look, if you're still relying on horses and you don't have one of these newfangled motor vehicles, like you're going to be left behind. And that's exactly the same as having an aspect of your business, which is getting the right information, making sure that you've got an internet presence, or not presence, but an internet channel or a way to connect to the customers in that area that you're using.
And
internet.
the root of all of it is, how do you make it easier to meet your customers' needs? Last thing I'll say on this is that, talking about, online retail. Well, there's also a crap load of friction in digital transactions. Like, you got to get the stuff delivered to your house. How do you get it into your house? Right? If you're not, you got to be there to receive. Like, the way we live is not set up, or then you got to return the stuff. Returning the stuff ain't easy either. So there are still huge opportunities, even in this new digital world, of getting the stuff to and from us. And so there's benefits, and there's hassles. And again, we're not able to try shoes on virtually or clothes on virtually. Again, this stuff will all come, I'm sure, in time. But there's still huge opportunities to remove the friction in some of these things. So, and the root of it also, there is removing the friction, and then there is enhancing the experience so people feel great when they're doing it. It's not just transactions. There's lots in it. The root of it is, how do you create and meet more of your customers' needs, whether it's removing pains or bringing pleasure in ways that are meaningful. And speaking of pleasure, maybe we can pivot to our second talk here. But
come on, I've got a much better pivot.
Do you? Okay, let's hear it.
All right, but don't spend so much money that you break your budget.
Oh, okay. You know what mine was?
Come on, hit me.
Is that, but there's also, creating pleasure, but, and I find there's a lot of pleasure in profit, right? Having profit and building cash, it makes me very, very happy. So that would be an alternate transition, and they're both great.
I feel like our sound engineer should dub a nice little tune over when you say that. That's awesome. Let's pivot.
Yes. So the second piece around profit and growing companies, it's both profit and cash. And, many of the companies that we work with, and we both shared this experience, is as these companies are growing, keeping the profitability, like keeping the business profitable and building up a war chest of cash, are challenging things.
Yeah.
And money in companies and in our lives is one of these things. Like, if you're not careful, it vaporizes. And I was chatting with a friend on the weekend about this, and it's just about the true definition of wealth. And this applies personally and in companies, but the true definition of wealth is not how much money you make, it's how long you can go without making money. Right? How much, how long can you live off, as a business, live off your balance sheet, or as a person, live off your cash in the bank and or your balance sheet. And there's a lot of people in the world who are there's a lot of people who make excellent income who are technically poor, because they can only go a matter of weeks before they need more cash. And there's many businesses that are the same. Hence all these government programs to help fund people and businesses, so they didn't fall on their face initially when things had to shut down. So, so the question really is, how do you enhance profit and build cash while you grow a company? And the answer that I would offer up is what I've seen is perspective and discipline. You need to see it and understand what's going on, and discipline. Because in the companies that we work with, we almost always make profits better, and we get way better at managing, but we always build up cash. Because I am relentless about it. I was trained early in my career. Cash is king. Cash is king. Cash is king. Profit is an opinion. Cash is a fact. Right. And you've got to build up cash to have a war chest for opportunity and for turbulent times. And that's why
you can't think strategically. Let's just think about all the things that we spoke about with Tesla and what can we think about as our customers. You can't think strategically when you're worried about making pay for all employees in 2 weeks. Like
Strategic thinking, when you're in survival
goes out the
mode,
window.
yeah, when you're in survival mode, all your creative process goes to survival.
Yeah.
You can't think beyond survival when you're surviving. And cash is a thing that allows you to think beyond survival. But if you don't have enough of it, I mean, if you've ever been in an experience where you don't have enough cash and you have a lot of bills to pay, whether it's corporately or personally, yeah, you're not thinking about the long term. You're thinking about today. It's like being out in the desert with your family in the 40 or 50 degree sun and having no water.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think about much besides getting out of the sun and getting water. Like nothing else really matters. Food to that point wouldn't even matter near as much as getting out of the sun and getting water for you and your family. And that's and water is like cash, or oxygen is like cash. And if you don't have it, it's a problem. So why do you think it usually vaporizes in the companies? We get the personal. It's a discipline. You know, and I was trained early on about, you know, saving a certain percentage of what you make. You know, it's interesting. Some of the best financial advice I was given in my life was in a car in the pouring rain. And I got some advice from somebody, and they said that the strategy for finances in their life was, when you get married, you live off one paycheck and you save the other. And it was essentially, conceptually, save half of what you earn. Not this 10% crap that people talk about. Like that's saving enough for a rainy day. That's not building wealth. So save half of what you earn, essentially, basically. And if you look at wealthy people, they save way more than half of what they earn. That's why they have built wealth. You know, you
to your question, I think that it's discipline, right? So, you know, you've got to be running a budget. You've got to be running a cash flow greater, and the cash flow should be obviously longer than 30 days, which is where your accountant's going to go to. They're going to go, look, we got accounts receivable, we got accounts payable. When all of those bills dry up, like, we can't go beyond that. So that's got to connect to your sales forecast and all of the budgets that you've got. Like, you've got to have that basic stuff, but then you've got to stick to it. You've got to actually stick to the budget. And the reason is that if you've got 100 people in your company, and as soon as you look outside of your office, there are 100 people who have got a list as long as their arm of things that they'd like to spend the company's money on. Now, they'd like to get another salesperson, another upgrade to the software. They'd like to, get a bigger machine or whatever it is. And that's all very important stuff. But all of that stuff,
and it all sounds logical.
Yeah,
it is. And it all sounds like, and when they make the case for it, it's like a starving kid in Africa. Like, you want to give them food. Like, it's like they believe that they need it. Now, the organization often doesn't, but they damn well believe. And that's why, Brad, like in discipline, like in the companies that we work with, I know you're the same, have become obsessed with letting the numbers make most of the decisions. So what is our gross margin, or what is our cost of goods sold as a percentage? What is our overhead, or what we call SG&A, as a percentage? Like, in a lot of the companies that we work with, we've got a number where SG&A should be 9.5%, 10%.
And what does SG&A stand for the
sales,
listeners?
General, and administrative cost.
So it's what we call overheads.
It's an accounting term for overhead. It's just a more technical term for overhead.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it includes sales costs, sometimes it doesn't. But once we get these things dialed, I like to benchmark similar companies of what the costs would be. And let's just say we know it's supposed to be 10%. Well, we can go from 10 to 10.5. But like over 10.5, the answer is no. You need to find the money somewhere else. And it's a tool for discipline, no differently than the lanes on the roads and the lines on the roads.
Yeah.
And the line is a discipline to help you keep on track. Now, you can pull over for a second and pass someone and then come back into your lane. You can go from 10 to 10.5 to maybe 11 for a month and then come back to 10 or 10.5. But what happens is that those overheads generally always blow, because overhead always thinks they need more overhead. They can't. The accountant always needs another accountant. And again, they're not bad people. They believe they do. But when you say, accounting cost in many businesses it should be about 1% of turnover, depending on the model, but that's a fairly common ratio. So it's like, hey, accountants, you've got 1%. And by the way, we need to take into account some of the software that you might want to buy because, you're spending more on software and you should be spending less on people because of it. But it becomes a discipline for decision making, and it's shocking when you start driving by numbers. But these numbers get out of whack. So often, where does the profit go? Well, one, gross margins get screwed up. So in our financial reporting, I always want to see the gross margin and see how it's trending. And we always have targets to drive it up, and in almost every case you can. And the overheads to keep it and drive it down, because people always talk about efficiencies and stuff like that. Well, if you have an efficiency, it shows up in your gross margin line or your overhead line. And you only get them if you aim for them and track them. It's almost like target fixation. So we watch those things a ton, because they get out of control. Like I had one client, overhead was supposed to run at about 10 to 10.5%.
Yeah.
Well, we made a bunch of changes based on a recommendation from a consultant, which somebody didn't price out the recommendations. And next thing you know, they're running at 14.5% overhead. And they made the critical mistake in growth. Critical. It sounds logical, but it's an amateur move. Is they pre-hired for the growth. Now, growth doesn't always come when you think it's going to come. It happens all the time. And I got the best advice I got, and it's from a CEO who, his name is David Sokol, and he turned around a company called NetJets, fractional ownership of jets.
Yep.
Now, he ended up leaving the group he was with. He was with Berkshire Hathaway because of some allegations around insider trading. Berkshire Hathaway has a squeaky clean, they are a squeaky clean company. And whether he did it or not, I don't know. But I got some time to chat with David after he spoke, and one of the things that he talked about is that you hire when you hit 120 to 130% of capacity. You don't hire when you're at 80 or 90. That's an amateur move. Because it'll bite you in the butt. Now, you should have people in the wings, and you might, if you're a company, you have 100 or 1,000 people, you might have a couple of people that you hire early, particularly in sales, because they're part of your sales engine. But people just don't have the discipline around costs. And anyway, David said hire at 120 or 130%. But this is where your CFO and having a spectacular CFO matters. So they can help you to drive by numbers. They can be the yin to your yang and help you to have the disciplines around money. The disciplines that actually help you to improve your profitability and your cash.
And that's really an important point, because there may be a list of other people who want to spend money, but equally in some organizations, it could be alleged that one of the least disciplined people is often the leader, the entrepreneur, the CEO. And if they see a nice new shiny object, they're going to go and get it because, do you know what? It's my company. And that could be a new office where it's 30% too big and they're paying premium rents that are not even considered in the budget. Or it could be, as you said, new salespeople or new hires that we don't really need right now. But yeah, where does the profit go? The profit goes because of an undisciplined budgeting system. And people
and excitement and opportunities. And it's all well-intentioned, but it's almost like, cash burns a hole in your pocket.
Yep.
As a person, if you've got a whole bunch of cash, it's easy to spend. Like, spending money takes no skill. None. There's zero skill, no skill, no discipline. Totally. It's easy to spend, shop, but to be able to build it, like I've seen so many examples, Brad, where that discipline doesn't exist. And interestingly, some entrepreneurs or CEOs don't care about profit as much as you would think. So I've got a couple of the companies I work with where it's like, I am the profit police. And I am the person that's banging the table saying, hey, we need to improve our profitability. This isn't good enough. And we need to build our cash. Like many of my clients, when we first started, think I'm nuts. Remember one of the companies we're working with, they were running, they were into their line for between, $2 and $5 million at any time. And I said, we're going to have $10 million of cash. And they thought I was Looney Tunes. And now they operate between $10 and $20 million of cash at any given time. Now we drove profitability, but more than that, we had discipline with the cash. Yeah. Because it's like everyone's, well, this is an investment. This is an investment. Okay. Show me the money. Show me the return. Where's the return on? And so when you start tracking these things and getting disciplined. So I go back to guardrails like they have on those mountain highways. So there's lines on the normal highways and there's guardrails on the real dangerous ones. Well, a growing company is a dangerous highway. Yeah. As for cash and profit, and having those disciplined processes. And that's why when there's financial decisions, I will talk to the CEO and then I look to the CFO and say, hey, what do you think? Where's the numbers? And I've been in meetings where executives have made presentations for it was like a $10 million capital project. And for this, it was a $200 million business, $10 million capital investments. Notable, not crazy, but notable. After 30 minutes, I'm like, I'm in, sold. He's showing a 9-month return on capital. So 9 months after we spend it, it pays for itself. Okay. Even if he's out by 100% and it's 18 months, it's a damn good idea. Yeah. It's excellent. Yeah. But then you look at all these other programs where people get excited about it, you can't see it. But that executive could present it in a way where we could see the return in a disciplined environment. And there's the two sides of it. There's driving the profitability to actually have the profit and not consume the profit. The second thing is on the cash. Then there's two different levers. One is to keep the cash and invest it wisely. The other is to not have it get lost and buried in the business, which is a whole other thing. Yeah. Where we actually haven't lost it. It's just locked up or stuck in the business.
But that's a little bit around disciplines. That's around making sure that we're getting the cash as quickly as we can, and it's not getting lost in all the processes on the way through, right?
It's all discipline.
One of the things that I do. One of the things that I do with clients is I try to get them in the budgeting process to compete for cash or compete for investments. So we say this is the amount of capital that we can reinvest into the business next year. Where will we get the best return? And then kind of looking through about 7 different lenses to say, okay, are we going to, put solar panels on the roof, or are we going to buy that new machine, or are we going to employ another 2 salespeople, or whatever kind of things it is, so that we have the leadership team rigorous about A, requesting capital, and B, their analysis of it rather than going on a whim. Again, like you said, 100%. More discipline.
But Brad, that is a normal process of a more mature company. Yeah. It's like, hey, we made 20 million of profit last year and we're going to reinvest 5 of it. Yeah. Got to pay taxes, but of that 5, you compete for it. And in a growing company, there should be demand for probably $50 million of cash. Everyone thinks their project matters most, and as they should. Yeah. But then that's and this gets into the most important job of the CEO. The most important measure of a CEO's success, aside from the sort of somewhat important number, like the engagement of your team and the quality of your team, but the ultimate outcome for a CEO is return on capital. That's the number that matters most. We gave you a bucket of cash, and then we gave another CEO a bucket of cash. Who manages that bucket of cash better and gets a better return? Well, those investment decisions define your return on capital. Yeah. Right. And those are super important. And, people get into having business cases, which sometimes become a messy bureaucratic process, but some numbers and thinking behind why should we do this and what do we expect out of it? It's important. But getting back to discipline, it's great to have that competing for capital, and I love it. And when it's done right, it's awesome. It's almost like we got a show here called Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, where
Yeah.
entrepreneurs try and vie for investment. It needs to be that same type of process.
Mm.
But then the second thing is to track it and see how it worked. So one of my companies has a beautiful system where in our quarterly financials, we have every capital investment we've made over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And we show how it's performing versus the expectation on the different time frames. So, hey, we put in this new software system.
Yeah.
We thought that it would save us equivalent of 3 full-time jobs, and it would reduce errors by whatever the case was.
Yeah.
But it's part of our financial pack where we see how they actually produced, not just the BS justification to get the capital in the meeting. How did it work out? Which helps us all to make better decisions, going from the theoretical to the actually what worked.
And
And
if you're
sometimes,
going to put a case up, you'd want to be pretty confident in the numbers that you're presenting, because you could be carrying that red flag for years into the future.
but most people put the case up to get the money and then they don't look back. They got their project, they're excited. And again, discipline. Because one of the benefits that we have, and if I was explaining to someone the other night, is that working around the world with all these companies, and I've worked with companies as you do for many years.
Yeah.
So you get to be in the boardroom in year one, where there's a hypothesis. Yes, we're going to invest in this new thing and it's going to be awesome. Year two, you implement it. But year 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you get to see, the actual results.
Yeah.
And most of them don't get a return. Most of them. And so I have become very a critical thinker about these beautiful hypotheses that people have, and saying, is that really going to produce an additional return? Because I've been excited about ideas so many times, and they often haven't worked out. So getting back to this, discipline, if you don't have discipline, you don't get great profit sustainably. And if you don't have discipline, you're definitely not going to build cash. And it's always available to you. And we're not judging the people that are doing it. People are so damn busy doing their day job and just trying to make stuff work.
Yeah.
But someone's got to be thinking about these things, because it vaporizes. So we're talking about guardrails, checkpoints, and being just vigilant around the profit and cash with those guardrails.
And budgeting.
That's a key part of it, is what is the expectation. And the CEO's job is to make sure that budget continually makes the company stronger and healthier. And I get excited about this stuff, Brad, because it makes a massive difference. And that's why our clients are not a good representation of what's happening in the economy right now.
Yeah.
Most of our clients are doing very well now, but we've been grinding on enhancing gross margins for years in most of our clients. We've been grinding on improving cash and building war chests. So when you've got healthy margins, notably above the commodity in most of our cases, and really strong balance sheets, when weird stuff happens, it's like, okay, we're going to work with this. And it can be hard, but you're coming from a position of strength. Not on the edge.
The first thing they think when weird stuff happens, the first thing they think is, okay, so how can we deal with this strategically, rather than there's a fire, let's go and get the buckets. It's all right, so let's just stop and we'll think about it and we'll analyze it. We've got more than enough cash to get us through. What do we do? How do we what are the opportunities that are coming out of this situation? And that's Jack Stack, right? From Springfield Remanufacturing Corporation. I mean, I've followed the great game of business for some time. And he says, we spend a huge amount of time tracking the economic indicators in the economy, because we know that during the uptime, we're hoarding cash, because then in the downtime, when the recession comes, we're going to buy assets at 50, 60% of their value. And that's
why their growth goes like
exactly
this.
Right.
Because and that's why I get excited about economic downturns now. Excited.
Yeah.
Because there's huge opportunities. Huge. If you come from a point of strength, i.e., you have a strong balance sheet. If you don't, you're going to be in survival mode, and you can't do your best work. So at the end of it, if you look at, what are the financial metrics that you're watching really, really closely? And this is where the CFO is so damn critical. And the CFO should be in every key decision.
Yeah.
And you need to track your success with your decisions and see how you do with it. By the way, last thing is that I love the operators. I love the people who run the businesses.
Yeah.
And when they make a business case, they don't have a lot of, they have credibility on, will this new system improve the business? But I won't listen to them on the numbers. Like, I want a finance person to validate everything they're saying. So if you're the operator, I'm going to listen to you about this thing will help our business from this perspective. But you'll only account for half of the information I'm taking in. The other half needs to come from a finance person. And some of the best companies that best enduring companies, they have a finance person on every project because it is a numbers game.
Yeah,
right.
That's why we're doing it.
Operators are passionate about the operation, but you need a financial expert to validate these things. So I drive some people crazy, and it's like, because the operators want to be trusted, but I want the source of numbers to come from a numbers person who that is their only discipline. And obviously they work well together, but like, I don't want to ever listen to a presentation with an operator in a room without a financial person beside them to validate that's been deep in the project, because now those two minds working together, and the best CEOs do that. Last thing I'll share. Two incredibly successful CEOs. One built a massive business in China. One built a massive business in the Middle East. And I asked them, I said, if you were to start again, what would you do as your first person you'd hire? They both said CFO, not accountant, not controller, but big brained financial person. And they both, and these two gentlemen did not know each other, but they both said this is a numbers game. And that right-hand CFO person, and these people had built massive businesses. That right-hand CFO is the most key person to me, helping me to make all those decisions.
Yeah.
And interesting, one of them had hired that type of person at the scale they were at. I think it was in the first two, I don't know if it was number one. It might've been within the first 3 employees, was a serious financial person.
That's what I did. I started a business 20 years ago, and we must have had 5 employees. We employed, what's called a certified practicing accountant. So which is a higher grade, not quite full-blown CFO, but someone who could not be a bookkeeper, could be full-blown. So let me ask you this question as we move to close. Where did all the profit go? Where do you think? I think it was undisciplined spending. Where did it go?
It went to all of our creative ideas.
Yeah.
It's no different than my 15-year-old daughter when we're in a store.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, look at that. And I can do the same thing, by the way. It's not just her, but it's all kinds of creative ideas without a real strong decision filter.
Yeah.
That's all. It's there. And there are some people who have more of a profit gene who are better at making those decisions than others. Some founder CEOs aren't great at profit. And that's why that CFO or other people are required. So where did it go? It went into our creativity. We had lots of creative ideas, and some of those creative ideas produce better results than others. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. So
awesome. All right. So thanks for listening. This has been the Growth Whisperers podcast with Brad and Kevin. I'm Brad and Kevin. For the, who would have thought, right? For the video version, you can find us on YouTube, The Growth Whisperers. And for my website, evolutionpartners.com.au. And for Kevin's website, it's lawrenceandco.com. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching. Look forward to speaking again next week. See you later. Have a good week.
See ya.